but everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing it.
The Tampa market started to rise.
In Northeast Africa, precisely on the Horn of Africa.
The local farmers.
All right, how you guys doing? Comrade, welcome by this. I'm about to say this morning. All right, welcome by this afternoon. Sunday, it's going to take a while before I can get used to Sunday because it's usually on Friday. So forgive me. But this is Frank. I am your host. This is the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series held every Sunday at 1 p.m. So today's topic, it says US and EU smell. They smell the end time of neocolonialism. And it says stay focused and united African leaders. Now, later on in the discussion, I am going to bash the African leaders. I am going to put them in their places, the African leaders, because we do not want them to make the same mistake that was made in 1963, the failure of the United Africa that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah wanted, because that failed, then it resulted to Organization of African Unity, today OAU. Had it been that the dream of Nkrumah was fulfilled by having a united Africa, there was nothing going to be Organization of African Unity. Organization of African Unity came as a result of the failure to unite the African continent, the failure as a result of the failure of one united Africa that Nkrumah wanted after they had a meeting in Liberia, Monrovia, Liberia. At that time, William V.S. Stockman, a puppet to America, William Aratoba, the vice president at that time. So it was a puppet regime to the United States who spearheaded that unity of Africa, and they failed, which Liberia was part of the Monrovia group. And in today, 2023, we are seeing the same thing being repeated. But African leaders, they are not thinking, but we are going to make them to think. Look back. 1963 has come back. Nkrumah came out with the book, Neocolonialism is the Last Stage. Nkrumah came out with that book as a result of the failure of having one united Africa. Now, what Nkrumah meant by neocolonialism is the last stage, folks, we're going to get into it. But let me just do the introduction. What Nkrumah meant when he said neocolonialism was the last stage. What Nkrumah was talking about was not just having a black face, doing the white man job. That was not only it. Neocolonialism, at some point, we all, everybody, every African play parts. I can say almost every African, almost every black people are neocolonialists. So what do we mean, or Nkrumah meant when he said neocolonialism is the last stage? It also means we African, we prefer the American dollar, the European dollar over African currency, over African dollar. It also means we as African, we prefer the white man home, the white man country over Africa. It's neocolonialism as well. So it is not just the African leaders or the authority in power that are ruling the continent. Neocolonialism, it can be defined not just to the African leaders selling our resources. We also play parts in some other way. We also play part in some other way because what we speak, we Africans don't listen to it. But the same thing we just spoke, if the white man come and speak that same thing, we African, we honor it. That is neocolonialism. We fail to read books written by black people. That is neocolonialism. We fail to read book written by black scholars. But we want to read book written by the colonizer. That is neocolonialism. That is what Nkrumah was talking about. Because we fail to recognize how valuable we are. We fail to recognize who we are in the world. And that is what Nkrumah was talking about. Because the moment we recognize who we are, the importance of African and the African continent, that will be the last stage of neocolonialism. Because we will have our own mindset. That is neocolonialism. So, I mean, other way, we all play part of neocolonialism. Because in today Africa, churches are too much. If you go into your church, you're going to pass by maybe 10 or 15 churches before you reach your church. But yet they stay, those churches do not preach any relevant information to their own people. That is neocolonialism. Let's continue here. Before we begin, I want to bring out a video. I'm going to start with that first before we continue. Bear with me, folks. I think it should be this. Okay. Ooh, hold on. Let me see. Hopefully play from here. Okay. So this is Professor Dr. Aman Atta Ado. So I want you to listen to her as we dive into today's discussion. So I'm going to play it. So let me pause right here.
We've given everything. The thing is that, as far as I'm concerned, since we met you people 500 years ago, look at us. We've given everything. You are still taking. It's true. I mean, where will the whole Western world be without Africa? Our cocoa, our timber, our gold, our diamonds, our platinum, our whatever, everything you are is us. I am not saying it, it's a fact. And in return for all of this, what have we got? Nothing. Anti-personnel indoctrination against ourselves. If you go and cook your horrible diseases like AIDS, you say it is us. You brought us tuberculosis. We didn't have this big cough until white people came here. In exchange for Africa giving Europe 500 solid years of our people, I mean not Europe, the Western world, of our human beings to work your canes, to dig your gold, to take in gold itself, diamond, I mean, you know, fish, peanuts, palm oil, everything. In exchange for that, we have got nothing. Nothing. And you know it. Nothing. And you look upon, you know, white folks look upon us like monkeys. It is true. It's in your literature. Hey, you know, some of your best thinkers have said this about us. Have you heard of all these Germans? Have you heard? Yes. They said, Lord Burton, people like that, they said, we don't even have the brain of animals. That's what we've got from you people.
But don't you think that this is over now?
Over where? Is it over? Who said that AIDS came from the green monkey? Is it over? Is it over?
Well, if this is your impression, do you think that you can ever forgive us?
It's not a question of forgiveness. I have nothing against you. My point is that you did and you are doing for your survival what is necessary. We can't blame you for that. The fact that we didn't do enough for our own survival and we are still not doing enough for our survival. That is not your problem. You know, even everybody that God has created has a sense of survival. You know, and if we don't develop it, we can't blame white people. You came here because you needed these things. You took gunpowder from the Chinese. You needed them to shoot people.
Now, I'll start with this, right? I'm going to do a connection with the Juneteenth. Sorry, folks. I'm building out my premise, all right? Now, you listen to her. We did not do enough. That is why what you did to us, you did to us because we did not do enough. You did it for your survival. Folks, whenever someone get into the habit, and that habit become a survivor for them, they will never leave that habit. All they do is they will find a way for you not to think that what they are doing, that habit, is harmful to you, because they feed of you, they feed on you. But the time has come for we Africans to understand, and that is what she said. Without African, had it not been African and the African continent, you European, you Westerner, you wouldn't have been at the stage you are in today. You are in a stage you are in today because of African. Neocolonialism is ending. And the West, America and Europe, see it coming. They see it coming because we have realized. At first, we did not realize. That is why some Africans, some Negro, some puppet went against other Africans to kill them. We did not realize it. That is why African leaders sat down there. And America went and killed Gaddafi with all that knowledge and that vision Gaddafi had. Whenever someone fear of you, they will never allow your vision to come true because your vision is a threat to them. And that is why we sat down there. We went with the narrative of Obama. We went with the narrative of Hillary Clinton. We went with the narrative of the oppressor, that is neocolonialism. At some point, we all play parts. And some Africans were there batching Gaddafi. And they believe the narrative of the West, of America. They believe the narrative of Obama the killer. They believe the narrative of Hillary the killer. And some Africans were there and said, yeah, Gaddafi was bad. Gaddafi treated his people. Oh, America want to get democracy to Libya. In fact, America believe in free affair. In fact, America believe in liberty. In fact, America believe in human rights. And they said Gaddafi was bad. Neocolonialism, we all play parts. Today, we cannot sit there and say America did this. We African play parts because we blame Gaddafi. Until we realize that America lied to Libya. America lied to the Libyan. Until we realize that America went to steal the Libyan oil. Until we realize that America went to steal the African resources. Until we realize the dream of Gaddafi was to unite Africa. Until we realize the dream of Gaddafi was for African nations to stop borrowing for the IMF and the World Bank. Because all those entities, they are evil and mean no good for Africa. That's the time we began to think. Neocolonialism, that is what Nkrumah was talking about. He was not just talking about a puppet in power. We all play parts because we believe the narrative. And that is what one of our comrades, Natasha, said yesterday. It is good for the oppressor, for the white man to have their narrative because their narrative fits to their survival. Because their narrative is against our survival, our liberation. So then how can we accept the narrative of those that survive through our struggle? Neocolonialism, we all play parts. But we have come to realize that it is at the last stage. We have come to realize and understand America and her allies, the European nation called NATO. Let's continue here to the next page. Like I said, I'm going to link it to John 10 before we move on. This is a revolutionary repatriation educational lecture series, folks. We are here to go back and dig the story and connect it to current event to awaken our people. We're not collecting offerings. This is not a Sunday where we will collect offering as the colonialists told us. A day should be set aside where people will come and collect money and give it to them. No, we are here to educate our people. Let's continue here to the next page. Let me see what I want to talk about here. Let me see what I want to talk about here. Because we are awakening. Let me touch on John 10 a little bit. Because it is part of the discussion today. It is part of neocolonialism being the last stage. Over there, see. All right, let me look for it here. All right. So it's in one of these YouTube. All right. Bear with me, folks. I'm gonna get it over. All right. I thought it was to bring this as well. Because if we are not aware of what we need to be aware of, we will continue being part of the neocolonialists. You know, in the 1800s, when America was about to create a colony in Africa, in fact, America was, anyway, not the first, but America was second or third to France and England to have a territory. At that time, they have not yet come out of the Berlin Conference. Because before America went to Africa, Great Britain was already in Africa. France was already in Africa. For example, Great Britain was already in today's Sierra Leone, and France was already in today Ivory Coast and Guinea. But before America got ready to go to Liberia today, Africa today, Liberia, she created a territory. And that territory, it was called a settlers colony. America created a settlers colony in Africa. But over the years, they have come to lie to us. So before America could carry the enslaved African to Liberia, just how Great Britain did it, when they took people from Barbados and other places like Jamaica and took them to today's Sierra Leone, America did the same thing. But she lied to us and said those people were free slaves. They were not free slaves. She wanted to create a settlers colony, and which she did. But before they went, those people they carried, they called them the rebellious slave, because those are the people that rebelled against slavery in America. And America said these people could no longer fit. They were not contributing to the American economy. So they had to find a way to take them somewhere so that they can still contribute to the enslaver. We are talking about 1822. 1822 to 1865, slavery was still going on in America. All the way to 1885, slavery was still going on in America. Then how dare you come and lie to us that you fell for certain African and then you took them to Africa, to their Liberia, because you wanted them to be free. Why you couldn't free all the slaves? You took 300 people or 400 people and took them, and you left over 4 millions of Africans, and you took 300 to 400. And you took them and you said you free slave. And then you said you want a place to transport these slaves. That is a neo-colonialist education right there. But then how come you told us you created Liberia to transport a free slave? But Marco Garvey and the UNIE, they were part of that free slave. How can you deny them if Liberia was created as a place to transport free slave? When Marco Garvey and the UNIA went there, and when Marco Garvey sent a delegate, you send them back to the America. Neocolonialism is the last stage, because we will not take the interpretation or the curriculum or the doctrine written by the oppressor. So that is why we keep asking, if Liberia was created for free slave, for free American slave, why did you deny the UNIA? Why did you deny Marco Garvey? And it was from that trip, that plan that Marco Garvey had, after he has sent about 500 delegates to Liberia, you stop them, you send them back. Why did not allow them? And from there, J.A. Hugo said, I will deal with this man and he will never come from there. And after that, you put a false crown on him, and that was the end, and you put him in jail. But before, in 1822, before they could take the free slave to Liberia, there was a man called Adam Smith, the man to whom they said he's the father of economic. Be with me, folks. The man to whom they say he is the father of economic. They call him to Washington, D.C. They call him to Congress for solution of what to do with the rebellion slave, because they were finding place to carry rebellion slave. And they said, we do not need this rebellion slave around America, because they couldn't carry them to South America either. Because at that time, Haiti was fighting already. We're talking about 1804 when Haiti fought for freedom and independence. And we are talking about 1822. We are talking about the 1800, 1820. They said, no, we cannot take them to Haiti. They said, no, we cannot take them to the Philippines. They said, no, we cannot take them to Brazil in Congress. And the last option, they said, we will take them to Africa. We will find place for them in Africa where they will have to create a colony for us called the settlers colony. But in our meeting, what Adam Smith said, in order for the slave to feel that he's a human being and he's part of you, you have to feed him the same way you can feed your cattle. You have to cater to him or her the same way you can cater to your cattle. The same way your cattle can work for you on a farm, and when your cattle is sick, you give medication or treatment to your cattle. The same way you can get water to your cattle, treat them like that. The same way you can get food to your cattle, feed them like that. If possible, sit on the same table with your slave and eat. And in that, the slave will not rebel against you. The slave will not go against you. But he's still a slave. In his mind, he's now sitting on the table with the slave master. But he's still a slave because he's been productive. He's still carrying on the mandate of the slave master. He's still working on the plantation of the slave master. He's still putting money in the bank of the slave master. He's still a slave. Despite you associating yourself with him. This is why John Ting is coming in with Obama. Or not, sorry, with Joe Biden. So that is why we have to stop with this neocolonial mentality. Now, Joe Biden said he has made John Ting a holiday that should be celebrated. Right? Very good. Folks, when the so-called slavery was ending, the slave master demanded for reparation. The slave master demanded for reparation. And it was given to them. It was not a choice to Washington, D.C. or Congress. It was not a choice. It was given to them. Then why not? If the slave demand for it, Joe Biden said he can't do it. Why not? If the slave demand for it, Joe Biden said he can't do it. If he can make it a national holiday or some kind of a holiday, what is the education behind this so-called national holiday? To allow to African people to go and give you votes? That is part of neocolonialism. But let's see here before we can get to that Juneteenth issue. Let's see the video here that I want to connect here. Because if they can't teach you this, there's no need you celebrate Juneteenth with the white man, with Joe Biden. You can celebrate Juneteenth as a revolutionary means, as an educational means. But not to go out there and start marching, beating bang going to the White House, eating some burgers and coming back, and that's it. What did you learn from there? What did you get from there? And they laugh at you. That is what Adam Smith meant. March with that slave so that he can feel important. Eat with him on the table, drink with him so that he can feel important. But he's still a slave. What you want to be done is going to be done. You want to vote? He's going to give you the vote. Make him to think that you love him so that when election, he will give you the vote. That was Adam Smith, 1822, when they were found a place to carry the rebellion slave. That's what Adam Smith told them. What you see happening, it happened in the past. They are educated, they are aware. Make the slave to feel happy. He's still going to be on a plantation to work for you. Neocolonialism is the last stage. Let's see something here.
African tribes that were taken away during the Atlantic slave trade. The Yoruba people were taken from modern-day Nigeria and Republic of Benin to countries such as Brazil, Cuba, and Trinidad and Tobago. The Igbo people, also from Nigeria, were taken to Barbados, Haiti, and Jamaica before being shipped to North America. The Akan people, primarily from present-day Ghana, were taken to Brazil, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. The Congo people, from the region encompassing modern-day Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Republic of Congo, were taken to Brazil, Cuba, and Haiti. Lastly, the Mandinka people, from countries such as Senegal, Guinea, and Mali, were taken to countries such as Brazil and the United States. These tribes endured unimaginable suffering and displacement as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, with their descendants now scattered across the Americas and beyond.
Now, I ask you the question. After you go to Joe Biden and march with him and eat some burger and pizza, and you go home, what do you know about yourself? What did you learn about Juneteenth, about yourself? What was Juneteenth about? It is not just about 1885. No, it is not just about 1865, where slave, they say, ended. What happened? What happened to them for 400 years? What happened to them for 500 years up to today? What torture did they go through? That's what you need to know about. And not only that, you need to know where you came from. Guess what? Joe Biden know where he came from. Oh, yes. Joe Biden know where he came from. If you ask him, he will trace his lineage. He will trace his lineage. How can Joe Biden tell you to come and celebrate something, a history that you have no knowledge of, a history that they failed to put in a curriculum to teach you who you were? How are you going to celebrate a harder day of you that you don't even know who you are? How are you going to say it was the last day where the slaves were free, where the last slave were free? It's not only that. Who are you? Who were you? Joe Biden should put it in a curriculum. Joe Biden should put it in the American school system. But Joe Biden denied the teaching of African history. Then how can you tell you to come to the White House to celebrate and then call your celebrity to come and dance for them, to come and sing for them? Do you think Joe Biden will be brave enough to call the Japanese American to tell their celebrity to come and sing for the slave master? Do you think Joe Biden will be brave enough to call the Jewish to go to Germany with a celebrity to go on stage to sing for the descendant of Adolf Hitler? Do you think so? Neocolonialism is the last stage. That is why Adam Smith was talking about. Make the slave to feel that he's important. Lie with the slave, interact with them. But he's still a slave. He is mine, he's free. He is mine, you guys are all together or doing things as one, but he's still a slave. Because you're still going to get from him what you want. But he's not going to get from you what he wants. We ask for reparation and you deny us. But you asking us to come and sing for you. You asking us to come and march with you. For people to think we are one, or you listening to us. You asking us to go to your stores to put our money in your stores, in your pocket, in your bank on John thing. That is what Adam Smith was talking about. If he wants for the slave to obey you, if he wants for the slave to say yes, sir, pretend to the slave, give him food to eat, give him water to drink, give him treatment, give him medical treatment. Because when a slave is sick, your production go low. When a slave is hefty, your production go high. When a slave is hungry, your production go low. When a slave is filled, your production go high. So treat the slave like you treat your cattle. We are not cattle to jump behind Joe Biden to go to the White House to march for what? To go and sing for what? When Joe Biden forefather asked for reparation was given to them in no time. Those that labor, you refuse to give them reparation, but you call them to come and dance. Slave mentality. You call them to come and sing for you. Slave mentality. Neocolonialism is the last stage. One way or the other, we all play part because of ignorance. Let's see one more thing here. Because we are telling Joe Biden, just coming to march and to work, we're not taking it. And we're not blaming our brothers and sisters who don't know. Because the American educational system has failed them. How can Joe Biden fail to recognize your struggle? But he's telling you to come and sing and march with him. To say hallelujah, Hosanna. Jesus Christ come and die for all, come and save all of us. Hallelujah, Hosanna. We love you, God. Oh, no. This is not time for hallelujah, Hosanna.
You know what plantation they've never shown us, Abby? The most prominent one. You know what plantation they've never shown us, Abby? The most prominent ones. The ones that were most profitable. The breeding plantations. Why don't you want to show us those? You know why? Because after the research that I did for this album, you realize that the moment that a girl menstruated, she was put in a stable where a horse would be and forcibly mated, forcibly by a male of the slave master's choice. And when she had children, they weren't called children, they were called a litter of pups. The punishment or killing a person in medieval Spain is gelding. Gelding is when you take hot pincers and you take a man's balls and dick off root and stem. Killing a person, law of the Bible, right? Medieval Spain, super religious. You killed a man, he should be killed. Why were indigenous and black people categorized as subhuman? So under the law, you would not be punished for the things that you did to us. That's why. You used to be proud, right? You used to be proud, white America, of murder. You used to be proud of colonization. You used to, wow, that made us tough. And then you got ashamed of it. And that's what you're dealing with. That's what America's dealing with, a schizophrenic crisis. There's a British manual, right, that was taken out of the British Museum because within the manual, it talked about how it was a weapon of war that should be used against the indigenous population. You're ashamed of that now. You're ashamed, right? Who was Christopher Columbus? His image has been so whitewashed, but he was trafficking little girls on an island. Who does that sound like, huh? All you right-wing defenders of Christopher Columbus and his legacy, he was trafficking 9-year-old indigenous girls on an island. Who does that remind you of, you intellectual coward? Just because liberals are dog shit doesn't mean that you shake hands with the devil, right? The same way I tell people all the time who are white working class people who hear about reparations for black people and automatically get upset. You know, they hear the word Africa and they're furious already. But the problem is this. The money doesn't come from you. No, it comes from the financial institutions that banked and built their stock exchange on labor, on the payback that they got from slavery. Because reparations is not actually what African people are asking for in this country. African American people are asking for the other half of reparations. You see, America already paid reparations at the end of the Civil War to slave owners. They gave them money per black person that they let free, and they refused to honor the people that were actually victimized. So until you do that, you will always be cursed, America. And you can call me a communist, a socialist, but you know what? It doesn't matter what you call me. You know that I'm right, right? And you know that I stand more for indigenous rights than I do for the European interpretation of a left-wing ideology that doesn't always work in a cookie cutter scenario when you plug it into Latin America. Because at the end of the day, that was still being pushed by two large governmental entities that wanted to challenge the United States' control of the region. We're tired of being pawns.
Okay. Now, with that last statement, we are tired of being punk. Now, that statement going to take us back to the African continent. Neocolonialism is the last stage. We are tired of being punk. That statement will connect us back to the African continent. Now we are here to discuss US and EU smell the end of neocolonialism. So, Monday, when you are celebrating Juneteenth, some of you who may not know the story, if you come across this video, I want you to ask President Biden, what do he know about Juneteenth? Just asking that question. What do Obama or President Biden know about Juneteenth? What is Juneteenth for? Is it for coming to eat pizza or burger or to march? What is Juneteenth for? If he tell you Juneteenth is for solidarity, tell him that's a wrong answer. You try, but you did not try enough. Solidarity between who? Are we punk? Don't lie to us. We are not a slave state on a slave plantation. He may tell you Juneteenth is about unity. Tell him you try, but you did not try enough. That is not what Juneteenth is for. And when you asking so many questions, I gave you two. Now, let's go to the African continent. Because the time for the neo-colonialist has come. The time for the oppressor has come. There is time for the colonizer has come. I think you've been hearing the drum. Drums are sounding all around the world. Africans are wake up. I don't want to say waking up. We have wake up. Not waking up, but we have wake up. And we are sounding like people who need it. You know, I'm going to remind the Africans leaders when I get to that point. I don't want to jump ahead of the topic. But we get to the point where I'm going to remind the African leaders. I already mentioned some of them about the failure of one united Africa, which led to the formation or which led to the birth of the Organization of African Unity. Today, African unity. But the question then becomes, is that unity there? How are you going to leave from Organization of African Unity to come to Africa or African unity, but that unity is not still there? Because African leaders are not coordinating. And that is why we are here to remind them today when we get to that part. Let's continue here. We don't want for African leaders to work individually, like how Gaddafi worked by himself and he got killed. We want for the African leaders to work together, to listen to each other, because the Europeans are listening. The Westerners are listening to each other. That is why Europe and America are working together. And that is why Europe and America will fall together. Because they went against the wrong people and they failed to realize that. And they still be adamant. And that is why Nkrumah said it is the last stage. Let's continue here. Let's see a few things here. Now, this is what I want to say first before I continue. African leaders, you guys should work together. Do not abandon any Africans who speak the truth. Because most of the time you guys have done it. You abandon Africans who stand for African people. But I know you guys are thinking and being wise now. I don't want to go ahead of topic, but let's go ahead. Let's continue here.
Continues to impede investments.
Low infrastructure connectivity is a serious impediment of our ambition to realize Africa's full trade and economic growth.
President William Ruto is asking African states to use local currencies to conduct businesses to reduce reliance on the US dollar, which hinders intra-Africa trade. Now, Ruto added that the Afrexim Bank will facilitate payment to respective traders in their local currencies. The president also added that Africa must fix its infrastructure to stimulate trade in the region. Faisal Ahmed has more.
Of the AFC. President William Ruto has urged African countries to trade amongst themselves using local currencies so as to boost regional trade. Speaking during the opening of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Council of Ministers meeting and the African Private Sector Dialogue of AFCTA, the president stated that African countries are held at ransom and that they should employ other means of trade that are not dollar dependent.
We are all struggling And all our businessmen are struggling, and our traders are struggling to make payments for goods and services from one country to another because of differences in currencies. And in the middle of all this, we are all subjected to a dollar environment. Kenyans want to pay for Tanzanian goods in dollars. Tanzania wants to pay for DRC goods in dollars. Egypt wants to pay. Why are we bringing dollars in the middle of our trade?
Ruto further stated that there is a mechanism in place that will allow traders to exchange goods and payment be done in local currencies that will be facilitated by the Afri-Exim Bank.
I am, however, delighted to note that Afri-Exim Bank, in its mandate to facilitate intra-Africa and extra-Africa trade, embarked on building a centralized payment and settlement system to support trade under the ACFTA. It is called the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System. Banks and payment providers can plug directly to it to enable secure and instant payment in local currency.
According to Ruto, the continent must establish sustainable funding and accelerate the overhaul of its infrastructure. He said that governments, the private sector, and development partners must partner to further this cause. He noted that the lack of efficient transport systems on the continent continues to impede investments.
Low infrastructure connectivity is a serious impediment of our ambition to realize Africa's full trade and economic growth potential.
Okay, I'll take that out, right? So that's the first discussion right there. Okay, we're going to dive into it deeper from other perspective. And there's a video here that I'm going to bring. I actually want to bring it. All right. Now, again, we're going to connect this to neocolonialism. All right. That's why I said we all play parts. Okay. It's not just African leaders. We all play parts. We all been playing parts. Do you know what a dollar have seems? I'm using that word deliberately. Do you know what a dollar has seems to be more valuable than the African resources? Because the dollar is being controlled by America. The Europe is being controlled by European, not African. Even though we have the resources, even though we are the richest continent, oh my God, whew, I don't know how we've been thinking. We've been having a colonial mentality, the colonial mindset. Even though we have the resources that a European want, that America want for our economy, but it seems that their paper money, their European money, paper, was valuable or is valuable than our resources. Because they have control of their dollar or their currency. And then we African, when we want to trade in Africa, we don't trade in African currency, but we trade in European dollar or currency, in American dollar or currency. So henceforth, they dictate to us and tell us our resources is not valuable than their currency. Their currency is more worth than our resources. That is why they always make decisions. They always decide on the value of our diamond, our gold, our platinum. They decide on the value. We don't decide on the value. They decide on their currency value. And they at the same time decide on the value of our resources because we're going to use their money to trade. We're going to use their money to buy. So they decide. That is why for each time we want to hold back our resources. They hold back their money. They put value on their money. Because at the end of the day, without their money, we are not going to sell our resources. Without their dollar, their currency, our resources will sit there. and we want to make business to survive. So then we will succumb to them. Neocolonialism. We succumb to them, and then they come back to us and tell us then, okay, now they have come. Okay, then your resources, you know, it look like this. It's like this. It's not. This is not really wealth. That's not a carrot for the diamond or for the gold. I mean, this lithium, it costs this amount. You know, our currency is value. You know, our currency is the number one currency in the world. So, yes. And then we have no choice. That is why in Africa, we don't trade. Because the currency, the US dollar is not African currency. The European dollar is not African currency. That is why we don't trade in Africa. That is why things seems to be difficult. That is why it seems that we live in poverty. That is why Africa seems to be the poverty continent. Because everything going to Europe and the West and America, because we want that dollar. So we send everything there. That's how our goods go. Because how can we be poor? But everything America want, Europe want, it comes from Africa. But by the time we start using our own currency, why do you think China is built? Why do you think China has moved? Why do you think even India is like that? Because once upon a time, Ghana, the GDP of Ghana was more than the GDP of India. Once upon a time, the GDP of Ghana was more than the GDP of South Korea or North Korea. But how come today those countries has passed? How come today North Korea is part of the superpower? Because they have their currency. If you want a North Korean goods, you get in the North Korean currency. And they tell you the value of their currency and their resources. We cannot have a resources and we cannot sell it in our own currency. And we think we will develop. And we think we will go. That is what China, 20 years ago, where China was, China is not there. Because the Chinese are using their currency. The Russians are using their currency. Why do you think they put China, Europe, and America emerge and they put sanction on Russia? Why do you think Russia is not feeding it? Even those that put sanction on Russia are the ones feeding it. Because the Russians are not depending on the American data. The Russians are not depending on the European currency to sell their oil. They depend on the Russian ruble to sell their oil. So if anybody want it, you buy it in a ruble, in a currency, not the American dollar. So that is why the sanction is affecting those who bought the sanction. If Africa have been doing that, then long-term America has fallen. Because America has put sanction on African countries since the Berlin Conference, after and after and after and after and after. Because we rely on their currency to survive. Common sense. We will get to the breaks. I don't want to go ahead of time, but we're going to get to the breaks to educate Africans to fall back and think. I'm not saying that you leave the breaks. No, that's not my statement. But let them think, what was the result of the Organization of African Unity? The result of the Organization of African Unity was because of the failure of having one United States of Africa. That's how the Organization of African Unity was founded in 1963 in Addis Ababa. Running to the breaks, I'm not saying don't run there. But you cannot go as individual nations. That is to say, you are going again in a 60 with the same Morovia group and the Casablanca group mentality. Or you are going with the Morovia group mentality. This is the time to unite the African continent. Going to the BRICS, yes, good. We want to see the imperialists to fall. But if they are falling, are we building? If they are falling, are we uniting? If they are falling, are we coming together? That should be the question. Because if not, the empire of the imperialists is not going to fall. Because they're still going to use other African nations. That is why in the BRICS, some African nations are still thinking whether they want to be part of the BRICS, while they are going one by one, slowly. But the question is, those that are leaving and those that are staying, what are they staying? Are they staying because they are still communicating with their colonial master? Because that is what happened when they have the Morovia group and the Casablanca group. Where the Morovia group were still communicating with their colonial master. And it is the Morovia group that gave back the power today that the neocolonialists have. It is the Morovia group that put back the power in the hands of the imperialists. Today we call America and Europe. It was the Morovia group that did that. Liberia was the forefront of the Morovia group. Let's continue here. Let's go to the next stage. Now, I'm going to skip the other video because we are running out of time. I'm going to skip the other video. I'm going to get to the main video I want to show because I want to show another view. And I want to show other perspective. I want to show because I don't want for the perspective to just come from African. Because sometimes we Africans, and that is the neocolonial mindset, it's very difficult for us to believe each other until we hear it from the colonizer or from the white man then before we believe it that this is really happening, which is wrong. But for the understanding of our people, sometimes we will bring it because we want them to understand. Because those are the same people that may come against us, and we do not want them coming against us. So we will bring the interpretation of others. If it is a tool to awaken our people, we will use it. Now, in this video here, I usually follow this platform. They are one of the platforms that really bring out the true story. They are one of the platforms that bring different perspective, different view, okay, of how the world need to function. That is why I usually follow them. But let's see what is said in here, giving perspective. Okay, giving analysis, all right, of Africa. All right, let's see something here. Neocolonialism is the last stage. By the time we realize that we in the war, by the time we realize that we hold the key to the war, because they know, all people know, the colonizer know it. But how come we don't know it?
Strides to break with the US dollar and the West in general. Many of those moves are happening this week. More than 20 African nations are expected to attend the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum that starts today in Russia. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But first, watch Kenyan President William Samoei Ruto speaking to Parliament this week, announcing that Kenya will start trading in local currencies within Africa and not the US dollar, as they have been doing for decades, and watch the standing ovation that he receives from this announcement.
from Djibouti selling to Kenya, or traders from Kenya selling to Djibouti, have to look for US dollars. How is US dollars part of the trade between Djibouti and Kenya? Why? And we are saying that today, Afri-Exim Bank have given us a mechanism where traders in our continent can trade in their goods and services, and the Africa Exim Bank will settle payments in local currency. That is why Kenya champions the Pan-African payment and settlement system that is done by our own institution, the Afri-Exim Bank. Why, members? Why is it necessary for us to buy things from Djibouti and pay in dollars? Why? There's no reason.
Good night, sweetie.
And we are not against the US dollar. We just want to trade much more freely. Let us pay in US dollars what we are buying from the US. But what we are buying from Djibouti, let's use local currency.
Wow.
I mean, it seems like the simplest thing, right?
Right.
Why do they have to buy US dollars in order to buy goods? In fact, Clayton and I, we were traveling recently in Egypt, and we were looking at the menu and we said, why does this Lebanese wine, which is close to Egypt, why is this so expensive? It's $50. And they said because of import trades. So Egypt cannot trade freely with Lebanon, which is just next door, or Jordan, or they have no trade agreements that the European Union enjoys, or the United States enjoys, or other blocs enjoy. Africa has been prevented from doing that. Well, now they are going forward with this system. What he mentions here is Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. It's called PAPSS. It runs through a central bank that has been started in Egypt. It's called Afri-Exim Bank. Doesn't roll off the tongue.
Yeah, it doesn't flow. They need to come up with a new name for that.
Now, it is based in Egypt and is shareholder owned. He says it is African owned, but it is also heavily invested in by China. Take a look. This was from 2012, I believe. No, 2019 says they were receiving $850 million from Chinese financial institutions. Well, Africa has been enjoying Chinese investment for quite some time. The West will tell you, this is dangerous. Africa doesn't know what they're doing. They're saying like, oh, you know, these Africans, they don't understand financial products, really.
Right. You got to be scared of the Chinese because they're going to take over everything. They will own you. They will destroy your country. Meanwhile, isn't that exactly what the West is doing?
Right. Well, and also the West benefits from Chinese investments. But we're telling Africans they don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand. I don't think there's anything more racist than that. Like, sorry, you guys don't understand finance. You don't understand that when you're accepting this debt from China, you're really doing your country wrong. But China has been investing in Africa infrastructure for decades. For example, in the Congo, major roads were shelled and destroyed in 1997 by the Rwanda-Uganda-backed army. China repaired those roads in 2010. Now, why would they do that? Here is how Siddharth Kara explained it in his book called Cobalt Red about cobalt mines in Congo. He says that China's dominance in Africa was established in 2000 when President Jiang Zemin proposed the creation of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation to facilitate Chinese investments in African countries. This relationship was billed as a win-win. The Chinese would build much-needed roads, dams, airports, bridges, mobile networks, and power plants across Africa. And in exchange, China would secure access to vital resources to support its growing economy. And that has continued. These roads were built. We're going to hear from a politician who is going to tell us more about that just in a second. Now, Kara, the author of this book, he thinks that Chinese cooperation may not be the best thing for Africa, but not all African leaders feel that way. Just this week, Zambian politician, I'm sorry, it's going to sound terrible the way it comes out of my mouth, Akende Memembe Chundama. I believe that you can't, it's not like Western last names where you can just use one name. The name loses its meaning if you don't say it in its entirety. And it's butchered from me, and I apologize. But she spoke in Moscow this week about how the West has been exploiting Africa for centuries, and Africa is now demanding autonomy, and they feel like Russia and China are totally acceptable partners as a means to this end. Watch.
Africa is a hub for natural resources. It has always been for the West. And now Africa has multiple options. Africa doesn't have to succumb to a bad deal that we get from the Western countries. Africa has choice now. Africa now wants to be treated as equals at the table. And now Russia and China offer that to Africa.
There's one simple hearing hack anyone can use to improve their hearing almost overnight. Did you know that hearing impairments have nothing to do?
Now, she goes on to talk about how the West has no problem toppling governments inside of Africa to get what they want. We have so many examples, but I thought I would just give you this one for tonight. This is Patrice Lumumba. He was the first prime minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo. For about 4 months, he was allowed to push for independence in Congo, and from June until September of 1960, before he was killed by the West. His close friend and ally when he was elected was a man named Joseph Mobutu. Up until Patrice Lumumba was elected, Belgium had been exploiting the Congo to such horrific extent that it was literally the basis of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness novel. Well, when Lumumba took over, he declared to the Belgian king, this is a quote, he says, "We are no longer your monkeys." And the West did not like that. Belgium pretended to go along with this independence of Congo, but they kept control of the Katanga mines. Lumumba then asked the United Nations for help. The United Nations sent in troops, but they said that their forces were not authorized to expel Belgian troops. So the United Nations didn't help them at all, knowing that it was only the Belgians they needed help with. So what did Lumumba do? He turned to the Soviet Union for help. And that's when the West swooped in and supported Mobutu to betray his friend and seize control of the government and arrest Lumumba. So they had a leader who actually wanted independence and for Congo to enjoy their own resources, and he was killed. The CIA reportedly tried to poison him by putting snake venom in his toothpaste, but they decided against that plan. That was one plan that sort of leaked out later. The Kennedy administration worked with Belgium to authorize for him to be executed after first torturing him. And after that, the Mobutu government was a Western puppet, and Congo's chance at enjoying the riches of their own resources died along.
Now, for copyright's sake, I have to pause the video to come in to say something because I don't want it to, play it to a finish. Even though they don't have problem with it, but just for copyright's sake. Because information like this, sometimes YouTube may not want it. So they will come out with some false allegation to say because of copyright, blah, 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 and stuff. So I have to pause it to just talk in between. Now, America, Europe, Africa is not punk no more. All right? Now, these are some of the reasons when you see Africans backing up from you and they say, we don't want America or we don't want European ideology or American ideology. These are some of the reasons. How can you not work with a government of such? You say you are a democratic nation. You say you believe in human rights. You say you believe in freedom of the people, voice of the people, what the people want. But this was a man. There are many African leaders that you have killed over the years, but this is just one of them. Look at Patrice Lumumba. You kill him. So many times you try to put toothpaste, poison is stupid. And now that again go to African. We all play part in the neocolonialism. Because if they were putting poison in his toothpaste, it was not a white man that was serving Patrice Lumumba, or it was not a white man that was serving those African leaders that America wanted to put poison in their toothpaste to kill them. It was an Africans that was working with those Africans. But those Africans, being a those deal to kill their own Africans. It was not a white man that was saving those Africans, it was black men. So they was passing through another black man to go and kill that black man. But the point here is, how can you come today, you say you want to work with African leaders to provide or produce great government, great governance system for African people? When you kill those people, or you kill Gaddafi, the recent one in our midst, you kill him. You kill Patrick Lumumba. So many times you try to kill Nkrumah. 5 assassination attempt. You did not like Jomo Kenyatta. You did not like Amilcar Cabral. You did not like Stephen Biko. All those people were visionary leaders who believe in democracy. As you preach, you kill them. And then today you want to come to us to tell us. That is why we are backing up. And you wonder and you say African people do not like you. African people hate America. You hate the African long time. We don't hate you. We are just telling you the obvious. Now we can continue.
With Matumba until now.
It's
right?
amazing. You can read all of the ways in which the CIA secretly tried to kill people. Yes, poisoned toothpaste, the exploding cigar for Castro.
Yeah.
And the list is endless about the creative ways the CIA has tried to destabilize and destroy foreign governments.
This one is a particularly heartbreaking story as well. Yeah. You know, the United Nations and the United States working against a people's elected official, and, you know, working to topple that government. Well, now the West has declared, I mean, it's just no wonder that African leaders feel this way now, right? Now the West has declared an all-out war on the East, and Africa seems to be forced to make a choice. They choose the East. At least many politicians are feeling this way. Watch again how Akende Memembe Chundama puts it.
Just a few months ago, we had a democracy summit in Zambia where it was basically a Western and a US-led conference to draw back cooperation with both China and Russia for the African continent. They want to always dictate to us who our friends should be, who Africa should cooperate with. And they're willing to topple governments, to assassinate our leaders for this. So the war is actually showing them that, and we're glad that Russia is standing up, because security around the world now is of utmost important.
Yeah, apologies for interrupting you. No. Now, we see that many Western states are trying to discourage the cooperation of many African countries with China and Russia. What do you think they fear by this? And are there attempts to discourage this cooperation working?
We're moving to a multipolar world, and it's very clear that Africa now has many options. Cooperation with the West is not our only option. BRICS is opening doors for the African continent to say that even when it comes to financing, when it comes to infrastructure development, when it comes to a future for Africa, we've got different options today. So this doesn't sit well with the West. G7 sits at the table to talk down on the rest of us in the West. But with BRICS, we're seeing a different order. We're seeing a global community wanting to come together and talk as equals. So this is not sitting well with the West. It's not sitting well with the hegemony that they're used to.
Wow, that should be.
Yeah.
Everyone should watch that clip.
Speak, girl.
Yeah.
She goes on to say that the debt they get from China is based on favorable rates, and they actually seize where it goes when roads, schools, hospitals, hydropower stations are actually built as a result. This is we do know how to evaluate financial products, thanks to the West. We understand interest rates and what you get in exchange for loans. She says this idea that Africa is putting itself into a debt trap is fake news and Western propaganda. And I'm going to say that that's racist for the West to tell an entire nation of people they don't know how to deal with finance. She says that she says all of this while she's in Moscow for the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Again, there are more than 20 African nations in attendance, and also leaders from Asia, the Middle East, India, and
All right, I took that out, right? So, but we have listened to it. All right. So I'm gonna play one more video. All right. From America here, from an economist. All right. So he's complaining to Joe Biden of what is happening. But guess what? He don't want to say the only option to save America is Africa. He don't want to say the only option to save Europe is Africa. He don't want to say it, but you can see it. You can see the desperateness. You can see the need. But they fail to say African people are the one to save America and Europe. They don't want to say it, but it is the truth. Let's see what he said here. And by the way, you listen to the panelists on our show, and you see their view, and you see what they discuss. It is things that we've been discussing. But the reason why I brought it, most of our people, most of the time, some of the time, what we say, they don't believe it. They think we are just talking. But that is why sometimes we bring a view of other people so that they can see it and know what we are saying. The empire, the colonial empire is failing. The colonial empire is failing. It is coming to an end. But how can it come to an end? Unless we Africans, and they know the power is in our hands. The key to the war is in the hands of Africans. They know it. They realize it. Long term, they know it. That is what J.L. Hooker said. Negro unity. He wasn't just talking about African people in a diaspora unity. He was talking about if African people worldwide connect, unite, we done. And the time has come. This is the time that he was speaking about. Negro unity is a threat. He wasn't talking about Negro unity in America. Because they know anytime Negro unity about to take place in America, they shut them down. Do you know how many people have been shut down in America here? The recent one is the African Socialist People Party. Do you see how they are trying to shut them down? The recent one is Master J, the NFSC. They shut them down. So they know African within America here, they will try, but they will shut them down. But African worldwide, if they can connect, you cannot shut them down. And that is what's happening. They cannot shut us down. They cannot stop us. We are movable force. We move. We are unstoppable when we unite. That is why he said, Negro unity. He was not just talking about the Negro in America. He was talking about the Negro of the world. If they unite, if they get to understand their enemies, if they get to understand who their enemies are, it's done. It's a threat. So, if our unity can be a threat to them, do you think they ever want us to rise? Do you think they ever want us to unite? That is why they always tell the Africans who Africans American are. They lie to us. And then they come by to the African, I'm being specific here. That's why I'm saying African American. Then they come back to America, they lie to the African American about Africans on the African continent. Because they don't want us to unite. Then they go to Europe and lie to the African there about the African on the African continent. Then they come to Africa, they lie to the African in Europe. That's how they've been doing it. They lie to us. They play their games. Because they know if the Negro unite, their hegemony finish. They know if the Negro unite, we're done with our European currency. They know if the Negro unite, We're done with that European interpretation. They know if the Negro unite, we're done with neocolonialism. They know if the Negro unite, it is an end to neocolonialism. They know if the Negro unite, their empire fail, their hegemony fail. Let's watch this and see what we're talking about here. They know it.
But the United States is not able to do what it did. And one of the greatest mistakes empires in the past have made is overreaching when they can't do that anymore. And my fear is we're at a very delicate point in that process, hampered by a denial of what's going on that periodically frightens me.
So if our politicians could get out of the state of denial and face reality, what would that look like? What would this soft landing that you just described look like?
They would have to sit down at this point, either with China or with China and what we call the BRICS, this group of nations that are really working well together, China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and Russia. I left out Russia, right. And there's a dozen other countries that have applied. So they're going to become much, much bigger in the next 12 to 24 months. You'd have to sit down with them and work out a live and let live arrangement. You know, the world needs a lot of things produced. Americans can produce some of them, Chinese can produce, and Brazilian. We'd have a much better world if it were more generously distributed. It shouldn't all be in North America and Western Europe. That's a legacy of colonialism we should better put behind us. If more of the different parts of the world really are integrated, they'll be less likely to be tempted to do militarily what they really can't afford. That's already underway. We might have done terrible things vis-a-vis China if we weren't as dependent on the Chinese as we already are. Look, from the time that Kissinger and Nixon went to China and reestablished relations with them several decades ago, until 10 years ago, the United States and China were helping each other. We're trading a lot. That's when a lot of American companies invested in China, et cetera, et cetera. We were able to live together. Those were years of great prosperity in the United States and great economic growth in China. My feeling is, look, we have much to gain and we can avoid a terrible loss. A war? Are we serious? Are we going to have a war around Taiwan, in China, in the South China Sea, at the same time that we're fighting a war in Europe? Really? With countries that all have nuclear weapons? This is crazy. We can't afford.
Now, let me make a comment here shortly before we go on. He just said it, right? Now you know who is fighting the war in Ukraine. Now, I just want to go back to the African leaders because I don't want to leave this out. Now, he just said, how can we go to war with China? When we are in Ukraine, when we are in Europe, he did not say Ukraine, but you know, obviously, when he said when we are in Europe. When we are in Europe fighting war, so now you know it is not Ukraine fighting Russia. Now you know who fighting Russia. And you know the reason they are fighting Russia. Because Russia and China are two superpowers coming together on the African continent. You cannot fight them. These are two superpowers that can face nuclear weapons. Russia already have it. Now, China may have it or they may not have it, but China is also superpower when it comes to technology, even their military, when it comes to men. And now China being in Africa is capable, but China is capable that China can face a nuclear weapon, because what China is going to use to face the nuclear weapon is in Africa already. The lithium is in Africa already, and China have the technology already. Now, if China is in Africa, it's possible that China is going to have a nuclear weapon. Now, if China is in Africa and Africa have the material to face the nuclear weapon, what does that mean? It's possible that Africa, through China, can have a nuclear weapon too. It's possible that Africa can have a nuclear arsenal through China. Because Africa is not going, as Africa is wise now, Africa is not going to allow China to just run out with the African resources and then take it to China and then face the nuclear arsenal in China. It's going to be faced in Africa as well. That's going to empower the African continent. Now, my message to the African leaders: while you are running to be part of BRICS, don't get it twisted. All those nations have currency that they are trading in. Don't get it twisted. Have one United States of Africa currency that you will take to the BRICS. Don't get it twisted. Have one United States currency of Africa that you will take to the BRICS. Don't go in our BRICS as individual nation without having one currency. That is what William Ruto is talking about. Going to the BRICS is not a thing. Defeating the colonizer, that should not be your focus. On it. Your focus on it should not be defeating the colonizer or defeating the dialogue. It should not be your focus on it. Carry the currency of one Africa to that BRICS. Don't go in there as individual nation. You will be conquered. We will be repeating the 1963 Organization of African Unity. We will be repeating it. Let's continue.
To do it, and we ought to stop trying. The wealth of the United States is a great incentive for other countries to meet us halfway. Let's use the wealth to have an attempt at least. Even if we fail, it's worth the effort to try to do this rather than the saber rattling that's scaring everybody in the world and not bringing the United States out of its decline. Its decline continues. You rattle your sword against Russia and China, the situation of the United States has not gotten better. The United States is more isolated now than it was 5 years ago. Russia is not the pariah nation that the United States and Western Europe would like to claim it to be. I'm not arguing whether it's right or wrong. I'm not defending this or any of that. What I'm saying is, let's be honest and look at the situation the way it is. We are fighting to the last Ukrainian, and I don't think that's a smart move at all.
It's certainly not pro-Ukrainian either.
No.
Although that's the discourse, of course.
It's very hard to imagine what in the world Ukraine will be. That's where the level of denial becomes frightening. I mean, the European statistics are that something like 30% of Ukrainians are refugees, left the country. And most of them are never going to go back. Why should they? Their country is destroyed economically, politically, culturally. The war has moved ever westward from the frontier with Russia. It's not about Russia winning or losing. Everybody loses in this, but the Russians are clearly moving in the direction they were trying to go, and the Ukrainians are trying to convince us that they have succeeded in slowing the Russians from what they were doing. Okay, I mean, let's be honest. We keep escalating the level of weaponry we give them. Is that because they're winning? No, that's because they're not winning, that you have to give them more and more. And there's no sign that the next level of more will be any more successful than the last 6 levels of more. And by the way, there are serious American military people whose patriotism is not in question, who think this is crazy. And periodically, you know, documents are released that show that they're there. The latest issue of Harper's Magazine has a lead article, "Why are we in the Ukraine?" And the answer the authors give, who are well-known authors, is we can't figure it out. We shouldn't be there. That's the truth of what. And you know, they're not siding with one side or the other. They're saying this is a mistake. We got into this for the wrong reasons at the wrong time, and we misunderstood the resiliency of who we're fighting against, which is a dangerous thing to do if you're fighting against them, because then they're your enemy, and you don't want to make mistakes with your enemy, et cetera, et cetera. All these folks, they're talking, but the folks at the top are now so invested in this policy that you can see they don't want to think about, they don't want to hear. They're just doubling down. It doesn't go well, send bigger weapons. Oh, that didn't work, send even more. Okay, I'd be at a certain point, that's the kind of story that will be told by historians of the future trying to explain why the American empire flamed out so quickly when it could have, like the British or others, had a much less violent, slower, more gradual, less disruptive of people's lives decline.
So what would this look like for you and me, let's say, both scenarios, the flamed out empire versus the soft landing empire? How does that affect US citizens?
Well, the worst kind of flaming out would be a military confrontation. I have no idea how that works. I don't know whether the people in charge will hold back from nuclear weapons. And if that starts, then who knows? So, I mean,
now, did you listen? Did you hear what he said? The last option, because the question was, I'm going to paraphrase it, because he said the wrong thing that we did was to go in Ukraine, was to go against Russia. And that's going to lead to the fall of the American empire. And I don't know if our government going to allow it to fall, because once it happens, then the life of Americans are in danger. Then Americans have to fly to other countries, maybe Africa, because Europe is gone. Europe is only surviving at this point because America is still holding on. It's for facts. So that is why Europe is a puppet to America. Europe is still surviving somehow because America is still holding on. But Europe already failed. That is why Macron is running from place to place. That is why Macron didn't want to join the BRICS. That is why Macron had to go to China to appeal to China, and left USA, left England, went to China. That is why Germany is complaining today. Germany going against America already about the war because she's already feeling the heat. Europe is already failing. They have four. Europe has four already. Because the diamond or the gold they stole from African nation in some part of India, it cannot sustain the population they have. It cannot sustain them. They fail. Because the diamond they have, they only have have it not for the citizens, not for the people, but they only have it for the so-called royal family. So they feel they are only surviving, hanging in to see where America will go. But as soon as America fall, they all fall because they fall already. They fall already. Macron is running from place to place. She wants to join the BRICS. They are falling apart. So they asked him, what will be the last option? And he said the last option may be war. I don't know if they will want to take that route. It will be war. But if it is war, it's going to be dangerous. Because you're looking at China and Russia. And don't forget it. Don't think North Korea going to come to the colonizer. North Korea going along with Russia and China. And don't think the Middle East, like Iran, is another nuclear nation. Don't think they're going to come. So that's what he's looking at. I don't know if that's going to be the right approach, like he said, but the last option is going to be war. And let me say a statement here. He said America made a mistake by going against Russia with war, going in Ukraine with war. That wasn't a mistake. That's how America has survived. If you look at the history of America, it has been through violence. It has been through conquer. Look at the whole Middle East. Look at the entire Africa, around the African continent. Look at it. Look at other nations around the world. Look at Haiti. It has been through violence. It has been through proxy war. But a just like Russia is a heavyweight that you think you are going to create proxy war and you win. That is why Africa needs to come together, because it is difficult to go against a heavyweight. But in Africa, Africa is not a heavyweight because we have individual nations who still protect the colonial nation. So that is why when they put sanction, it go. But why do you think they put sanction on Russia? It did not hold. You think America or you are going to put sanction on China? They put sanction on Russia. What happened to them? They are the ones suffering it. And now they are saying the mistake they did was to put sanction on Russia. But have you ever seen an European journalist or economist say the mistake America did was to put sanction on Zimbabwe or Liberia or Ghana or Nigeria or Sierra Leone or Senegal or Mali or Sudan or Chad? Then let's go. Have you seen them say it? Because we are not a heavyweight.
I don't mean to be an alarmist, but it is a life and death matter and will be for significant numbers of people if this kind of confrontation is pursued. We're already paying the price of this. Let me give you two examples. Because Russia was not brought to its knees by refusing to buy oil and gas, Russia shifted its oil and gas, as I said, to India and China and others, but those are the two big buyers of the Russian exports. Okay, that meant that the previous importer of Russian oil and gas, Western Europe in particular, and Germany, the #1 economy in Western Europe, relying on Russian oil and gas, they can't get that cheap energy anymore. What does that mean? They have to buy energy in the world market, including liquefied natural gas from the United States. But to produce that gas here, to convert it into liquid, to ship it on tankers over to Europe, means that they're paying 2 to 3 times more for their energy than they used to. Well, what does that mean? It means that the inflation inside Europe is very bad because the higher prices of energy become costs, higher cost to produce everything that takes energy, food, clothing, shelter, all the products of Europe. So, for example, the inflation in Europe right now is north of 10%, double what it is here in the United States, which means the Europeans can't compete with the United States as they normally do. They're being priced out of the market. All over the world, people who used to buy German machines or French luxury goods or Italian furniture or whatever it is are buying American or Chinese or Brazilian, but they're not buying Europe. You know, let me give you a sign of what it meant, because this is happening in our country too. Our inflation here, which has been very bad for the last 18 months, is also a product of these changes in the global economy coming out of the American-led sanctions war against Russia. Okay, here's an example. The first quarter of this year, January, February, March, quarter number one of the year 2023, economic growth in Germany, 0%. They didn't grow at all. Their population grew, the needs of their people grew, but their output of goods and services, 0. France, 0.2%. The United States, 1%. The People's Republic of China, 4.5%. Do you understand? China, which has been growing 2 to 3 times faster than the US for 30 years, continues to do that. Western Europe is a disaster, and the United States is somewhere in between. These are very bad comparative numbers. That's hurting the American economy. Everybody who goes into a grocery store and discovers what it costs for a dozen eggs is discovering one of the consequences of an inflationary situation. So desperate is the inflation that our central bank, the Federal Reserve, over the last year has raised interest rates further and faster than at any comparable time in American history, meaning that everybody's credit card debt is going through the roof. Anybody imagining going to college is going to be facing higher costs of doing that. Ditto to buy your car, ditto to buy a home. I mean, we are facing rising costs that are directly connected. It's not the only cause, but this war in the Ukraine, this effort kind of desperately to hold on to a declining empire, because that's what's behind all of this, is costing us in countless ways. Today's Bloomberg, I read the financial press every day, today's Bloomberg has a lead headline that the consensus of economists is a recession is coming here later this year or early next, and it will cost, here's their number, 3.4 million jobs will be lost here in the United States. There's a cost. That's 10, 20 million people that are going to be suddenly without income, having to join the unemployed, with all that that means in terms of your self-esteem, your feeling, your relationships with your spouse, with your children, with your community. The costs here they're all over the place once you ask what's going on and you see the connections. Yes, the government doesn't want you to because it doesn't want to get the blame for its policies. I understand that. And you have the cheap shots of the Republicans who want to get in and do what the Democrats are already doing, and so attack them for it. You know, it's childish. That's why you were right to talk about it being theater. But it's not theater in the sense that it's all a play, because it really affects all of us directly and indirectly in our daily lives. And I think we're going to be very sorry. The American working class, if you allow me, has really been put through the ringer. Over the last 30 to 40 years, the real wage, the amount of money an average worker gets, adjusted for the prices that average worker has to pay, has been stagnant. Hadn't gone up, hadn't gone down. It just sits. That's very strange in American history. For the previous 150 years, real wages and what we could afford to buy went up. That's a trauma to put a working class that has gotten used to American exceptionalism, to the notion that every generation will live better than the one before, that your parents will see you have a more comfortable life and you in turn with your children. And all of that's gone, been gone for 30 years, causing all kinds of havoc. Then we have the crash of 2000, the so-called dot-com crash. Then we have the even worse crash of 2008, the subprime mortgage crisis. Then we have the third crisis in 2020, before COVID hits, and then made worse by the pandemic. And look, you want to see another measure of the decline of the United States? We are 4.3% of the world's population, we Americans. And we suffered 16% of the world's deaths from COVID. A rich country, a dominant United States, that's a big F for failure to manage a public health emergency. What's going on? Why do we have these things? These are fundamental questions that ought to be on the top of everybody's agenda. That soft versus hard landing you asked about, that should be what we're talking about. We should hear what our leaders offer in the way of a response to that existential crisis. No, we don't. Instead, we're trying to fight an election based on what kind of bathroom trans people may be allowed to utilize. Talk about denial. It's a level of denial.
Yo, does he say that? Man, like he's saying, we don't want to talk about policy, okay? That will bring peace to the world. But we want to talk about transgender, which transgender will use what kind of bathroom. They're going to come for you. Oh, man.
That is frightening because it's so close to pathology.
Okay, so P. Smith, how you doing? Welcome. So you heard, okay, from this video, what is happening. All right. So when Nkrumah said neocolonialism is the last stage, this is what he meant as well. Because as we African people, the Negro, when they are taking a place in the world, what's going to happen? They fall. Okay? Once the Negro realize who they are and unite and take possession of what belongs to them, what's going to happen? The empire of the colonialist, the empire of the enslaver, the empire of the oppressor, the empire of the capitalist going to fall. And you saw what he said. You heard what he said. Right? You heard what he said. Neocolonialism is the last stage. And at the beginning of the video, you heard what he said. What America is doing, or what America has been doing, it is a colonial mentality. It is a colonial policy. It is a colonial doing. And you cannot continue with that colonial attitude with this current generation, because the neo-colonialist is dead right now as we speak, because the people have woke up. The Negro, like J.A. Hoover talked about, the Negro unity is a threat. This is a threat he was talking about. Negro unity is going to be the threat to Europe. I mean, Europe already failed. You heard what he said in the video. You heard what he said in the video when he discussed it, when he laid line by line, all right? Precept by precept, concept by concept. When he laid it, when he bisected it, you saw it. He said Europe already failed. They're gone. Europe is only surviving because America is still holding on to her one legs, pulling her back. Don't fall. Stay with us. Stick with us. Please don't go. We're going to survive. We're going to make it. No, you're not going to make it. The only way you're going to make it, unless we fall back to sleep. And that is what Joe Biden wants to do when he tried to divert it to say, Juneteenth, come and march with me. Come and walk. Come to the White House and eat some burger. Come to the White House. Bring your celebrity. Let it come and dance. Let it come and sing for us. Why can't you call the Japanese to come and sing for you? Why can't you call the Jewish to come and sing for you? To come and dance for you? But only African you call to come and dance for you. Neocolonialism is the last stage. Whether on the African continent or whether in the diaspora, it is the last stage. Let's watch the last video of Petrol Lumumba and then we can do a connection and we'll be done for the day. Petrol Lumumba remind us in this video specifically to African leaders. Before we do that, let me I don't want to leave this out. Let me bring it. Let me bring this out. I can't leave it out. Now, the reason why we are telling America and Europe, no, enough is enough. This is why. Because we have realized that we have given them so many chances. But because they have an agenda which is not in our favor, which will never be in our favor, that is why we are telling them no. And this is why we are telling them
Africa had a role to play. It has a role as a raw material producer. We will not allow sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital for the prosperity of everyone else. So let's get clear about that. Okay, and this means all the economic structures, all the global institutions, and the economics we teach everyone is all designed to keep Africa exactly where it is. And whether it is Europe or US or now China, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap. Okay, so that's the message. It doesn't mean to say that there's nothing Africans can do. Of course there is. Okay, but this is the opposition that they're fighting. This is what it's about. Because if Africa does do something different, I assure you living standards of all those in Europe and North America and Asia is going to fall.
Now, you heard it, right? You heard it. Now, why will we African hear such statement where we have compared Russia in Africa, China in Africa, America in Africa, Europe in Africa, we have compared them and we know their attitude, their mindset, their mentality. Do you think we will prefer America over China? Or we will prefer Europe over China or Russia? I'm just asking a question. If you can have the kind of mindset that your agenda is to see Africa being poor, if we have this kind of mindset that if Africa does rise, Europe living standard in Europe going to fall. Living standard in America going to fall. Just because you want to continue your living standard to look upon African nation, African people, you want to keep them in poverty, abject poverty. And then blame the African leader that you are the problem. Blame the African people that you are the problem. You are lazy. You are the cause of their calamity. You are the cause of their disaster. You are the cause of their suffering. But you putting it in our faces that you are the cause. Why will we come to America and prefer America when you have been on the African continent for over 500 years plus? But our problem have been caused by you, and you put it in our faces to tell us if we does rise, living standard in Europe will fail. So you prefer your living standard in Europe and America while we suffer and perish on the African continent. We have to run to come to Europe and America where you have to eliminate us. You have to check on us whether we have whether we have sickness, whether we have any kind of rashes on us, and you call our names. But yet there you continue to exploit our resources. You call us monkeys when we want to come to Europe and America for life, to experience our resources. You call us monkeys. You say poverty smear on us. But you telling us the day we realize that poverty does not smear on us, then allow me, America going to fall, the living standard in America going to fall, and you don't want it. But you telling us poverty smear on us. Let's see what Patrick Lumumba said here. Let's continue here. Now, what we're about to listen is like 30 seconds or 1 minute, and then we close for the day. Patrick Lumumba, Professor Lumumba, he's warning African leaders. He's warning African leaders. You are running to the BRICS. That's fine. But don't get it twisted. What are you carrying to the BRICS? What are you carrying? Because the Chinese are coming with their Chinese currency and their technology. The Indians are coming with their currency and their technology. The Russians are coming with their currency and their technology. Middle East, also they are coming with their technology and their currency and the little resources they have. They are coming as one. We Africans, the African continent, what are you carrying? What are you carrying to the BRICS? The Chinese are also coming with their military. The Russians are coming with their military. Middle East, they are coming with their military. Not forgetting the Indians, they are coming with their military. What are you carrying, Africans? Are we going to have another 1963 Organization of African Unity? Are we going as an organization, or we are going as a continent? Oh, I'm asking a question to African leaders. Are we going to the BRICS as a continent? Or we are going as an organization? Are we going as an organization to say, these are the West African nation, these are the Middle Eastern nation, these are the Southern African nation, these are the Western African nation, these are the Northern African nation, these are the Central African nation, Is that how we're going? Or we are going as a continent? Be wise. If not, we're going to repeat the 1963. And we will come out with that breaks of nothing but another failure. Let's see what he said here.
Then came the Portuguese, we welcomed them, they abused us. Then the Dutch came, we welcomed them, they abused us. Then the Italians came, we welcomed them, they abused us. Then the Germans came, we welcomed them, they abused us. Then the French came, we welcomed them, they abused us. Then the English came, we welcomed them and they abused us. Then the Indians came, we welcomed them and they abused us. Then the Lebanese came, we welcomed them, they abused us. Now the Chinese are coming, we are welcoming them and they're abusing us. We must stop this. And we can only stop this through self-realization. This is the only
Now, I have said what I wanted to say about the video already, and the video played. So, comrade, thank you for being on. We've been here since 1 o'clock, and now it's 7 minutes after 3. This is today's message. I hope we learned something. I hope we got something. Even if I have said nothing meaningful, but I know I said something, 1 or 2 words, meaningful, that you can take from there, that we can take from there. Share this video, subscribe, like, let it reach to our people. The time is now. The time is here. The time Nkrumah predicted has come, which is the last stage. The war was in our hands, and we let it go, and it's coming back. Are we going to let it go? The keys to the war is in our hands. It's in the hands of African people. A hymn to a wise is quite sufficient, like the wise man always says. Those who have ears, let them hear. Africans, African leaders, what are you carrying to the BRICS? Africans, Juneteenth, how are you going to celebrate? Are you going to celebrate in the revolutionary mood, or are you going to celebrate as a person whose brain have been watched? Go and march. Go to the White House and come back. Then they give you some water, some juice, and you drink it. And then they pat you on your shoulder. It is well. It is fine now. Go home and just wait for the campaign and come and vote. I hope we got something. I will see you all Friday. Oh, Sunday. I keep saying Friday. I will see you all next week, Sunday. Peace.